Hi everyone, it's Shari Carroll for Simon Says Stamp with a project using the Tim Holtz clipboard and using some multimedia techniques. To get started, the first thing you'll want to do is to remove the hardware and the clip from the top, and it's really easy to use just a flathead screwdriver and unscrew the screws. And then once you have that completely flat, you can start doing some collage. I'll be starting off with the pocket cards from Tim Holtz. I really love these papers, and I still am using the original pack I ever started with. So I'm going to start putting down some papers, kind of dry fitting how I want the papers to look before I start gluing everything down. And once I have a general idea and make sure that everything will fit together, I can go ahead and start the collage. And I'll be using the new Tim Holtz collage medium. And these come in small jars in a pack of 3, or you can buy the large jars individually. And once I get you started on each segment, I will be speeding this up so that I can fit it in the time allowed. While I'm letting my papers dry, I'm going to go ahead and add some crazing to my photograph. And I've printed my photograph on my laser printer so the ink won't smudge. It's really easy to do. I'm just using a stiff paintbrush, and I'm just going to go ahead and apply some. In some areas it'll be a little bit heavier than others, and I'm just going to go for it and see what we get. Now that my papers are dry on my clipboard, I can go ahead and put my attention back to that while my picture's drying. And right now I've just poked out the holes that are for the screws for the top of that clipboard. And I'm going to use some stencils and a technique of using the distressed crayons through the stencils. This is really easy to do, and I'm starting off with a peeled paint crayon. I'll just scribble this onto my craft sheet. And the next thing I want to do is to squirt this with a little bit of water. You don't need too much water because you don't want it to be too fluid where it goes under the stencils, just a little bit. I have a clean blending tool, and I'm going to go ahead and smear this around and get going. Now my photograph is dry, and I'm going to go ahead and use my walnut stain distress crayon and go ahead and scribble right on top of my photo. Next, I want to do my favorite technique, and that is to add some foiling to my background. And I have my Ranger glue stick here and also some champagne colored foil. And I am just going to go ahead and just draw onto that clipboard with that glue and then place the foil right on top and rub it with my finger. Then I can lift off, and then I have some great foiling. I have die cut some papers, actually Nina cardstock, from the Tim Holtz Tiny Tattered Florals. And these are really great flowers to add to your projects. You can roll them up so you can see they kind of come in that spiral cut. And they're really delicate. So I'm going to show you how I get mine out of the die. First I go ahead and poke through the backside through one of those holes, and then I'll flip it over and I use my poke tool and I just kind of slide it under that spiral and feed it around until it releases the whole paper flower. I'm going to be coloring these flowers, and I'm just going to go ahead and add individual colors on my craft sheet and then squirt that with water, and then I'll go ahead and dip the flowers in. And throughout this process I'll be adding different colors. Now that I have my flowers colored, they're a little bit bright for a vintage project. So I'm going to mute the colors down by using some walnut stain distress crayon and a little bit of water, and I'll be using my paintbrush to kind of dab in and add some brown tones. I'm also going to use my vintage photo crayon as well through this process. I want the edges of my petals to be a little bit more defined and also vintage looking, so I'm using my blending tool and walnut stain ink just to blend in. My flowers are the color that I want them for this project, but I'm going to be rolling these, so I want to make sure that I have the paper colored on both sides, and I've chosen just to use my walnut stain ink. So I'm going to go ahead and grab ink with my blending tool and just dab onto the whole back side of these flowers. I don't want to do any real blending because they're so delicate at this point, so I'm just basically pressing right down. There is a tool that comes with the dies, and it's really fantastic. It has a slit in the top, and so I'm going to start at the smallest side, so that outside edge, and I'm going to go ahead and feed the paper in between those two slits. This is an absolute brilliant tool. Thank you, Tim, so much for doing this. So once you get your paper fed in there, you have this tool that you can just start rolling that paper around. This holds everything in place. There's no need to glue any toothpicks or do anything in there, so you can just go ahead and start rolling. Now I am rolling this to where the color goes to the inside and I can see the brown or the back on the outside. And once I have the entire flower rolled around, I'm going to go ahead and press it into some of my multi-medium that I've put in my craft sheet. And I can go ahead and add a really nice dollop on the inside. And then that bottom flap will sit just flat on the bottom of the flower. So I'm going to fill up that whole little spiral area with that multi-matte medium. And then I'll fold this other bottom piece over. And then I can let it set and dry. The next piece that I want to add to my collage is a ornate frame, and this is cut from the Craft Core Shattered edition, or the Shattered collection. So I have die cut that, and what I want to do is to add a little bit of silver to this. I'm not going to add foiling, but I'm just going to go ahead and add my brush pewter paint and I've put a little bit onto my craft sheet, and I'll use a dry brush to brush this on. An easy way to dry brush is to dip your brush into the paint and blot some off, and then you can go ahead and brush it onto the project. One of the final things I want to do before I do my assembly is I am adding some picket fence distress crayon to my quote band, and I'm just pressing that right in and using a good amount of pressure. Here are some detailed looks at the project. You can see how the crazing really worked out really well on the photograph. And also the flowers are bright looking yet vintage, so I have consistency through the project. And also the words of my quote really pop out by using that distress crayon picket fence. I hope I've given you some inspiration on using some Tim Holtz products, especially the clipboard. Be sure to check out the description below for a list of all the products. You can also find the link below to the blog post to see still shots of this project. Thanks for watching and enjoy!